baby. Couldn't wait to get on today. Most people will never experience real power. You know why? Because they don't even know what it looks like. Because they're asleep when it is being built. So that's right. If you're here with me at 4 a.m., you are already ahead. Welcome to Epoch 1, day 71, where our core theme for today is identity. Identity. We'll talk about what identity is, what the consequences associated are, and how to possibly execute and rewrite it. Let's be clear. Your identity is decided by execution. Your identity isn't a thought, a title, or a wish. It is a record of your execution. Who you are is what you do repeatedly. Who you become is determined by what you execute consistently. Who you stay is dictated by what you refuse to let go of. Execution is identity. Hesitation is self-erasure. Consequences. Consequences are real. It's raw for story time. We start personal. And I'm going to talk about when my identity was found. And I'll say it like this. I didn't find my identity. I stumbled onto it. I wasn't really looking for myself. I wasn't searching for meaning. I wasn't even aware that I was conscious of consciousness. I couldn't tell you a thing, not a thing, about the systems inside me and how those systems inside me dictated my movements, my reactions, my defaults. And I really wouldn't even have cared if I didn't find my root, if God hadn't intervened. By all accounts, my identity was never meant to be awake, not to be confused with success. You already know I had that. I had instinct, I had image, I had appearance. I knew how to move through the world in a way that looked like power. I got the suit and tie business identity. I locked that up. I built the white picket fence identity. I locked that up. And I pursued it with absolute intention. And yet, it never fully answered the question, who am I? That's when I realized success doesn't mean identity. What I had wasn't identity. It was trophy living, box checking, silent coveting. It was reacting to life's pressure, not defining my own path. I wasn't building an identity. I was not. I was maintaining an illusion. And if I hadn't woke up, let's be real, this is exactly where most people are today. If I hadn't woke up, the system would have kept me exactly where I was. So what is identity? It is not titles. It is not labels. It is not how you appear. Identity is not a name. It's a weight. It's a gravity. It's a force. It is what you carry. It is what you protect. It is what you build even when no one is watching. And if you don't claim it, you can't escape it. The world and the system, it will assign you one. I had to learn this through annihilation and destruction. The destruction of false identity, the destruction of surface level meaning, the destruction of believing reputation was enough. Because if identity is just how you are seen, then what happens when no one is looking? Think about what I'm saying here. Give me a second to take a deep breath and collect myself after that power. Identity. I just hit you with a lot. And this is really the main cog, if you would, in the evolution of my life personally. Let me give you a strategy analogy to tie that in. And because I'm an IT guy and I'm a systems guy, let's think of it like this. Your identity is your system login. So let me break it down in pure system terms. Your identity is like a login. When you execute, you authenticate. When you hesitate, you time out. And when you fail to act, the system logs you out. And worst of all, if you don't move long enough, someone else takes control of your profile. You either write your code or you run someone else's program. You either establish your system or you're processed inside of one. You either move or you get deleted. I don't know any other way to say it. Consider where you're at with your identity, who you actually believe you are. It's the impetus for the do you rules. You're doing you. But are you doing you in a way that is true to you? Identity is, I believe, one of the most mismanaged criteria and actualities of our time. And highly manipulated and highly influenced on the daily, by the second. Let alone the realization that when you start to try to identify, you quickly begin to label yourself based on how your crowd introduced you and indoctrinated you into your existence. You're a product of your environment. Cliche, I know. Have you given that any depth as far as really considering and contemplating how that relates to your identity? Sure, race, culture, religion, ethnicity, background, exposure, all these things are pertinent and relevant to the conversation. But if you simply are just handed that identity, you take it and you don't not even really scale it, you just accept it and you move in that way, when did you ever stop to create your own identity? I'm not suggesting that the one that you've adopted today won't suffice. I'm just questioning if you've ever had the question. That was me. I assure you, maybe I was just that ignorant, but I never gave that question a thought. How do I identify? Hi, how are you? Cliche Jeff. What do you do for a living? Why the fuck does that matter? How do we How do we how do we interact with our environments, with our lives? It's a question that I think we need to answer for ourselves, especially as we push towards doing you. Let me get into some God, some stoicism, and ancient wisdom. Let's call this the test of identity. I wanted it to add something a little bit deeper because this has been understood for centuries. God in the book never just gave identity, he made people prove it. If you look at the stories, Abraham, he was Abram. Abram wasn't called Abraham until he executed. His name changed after he proved his faith. Saul, I always get confused on how to say that, wasn't Paul until he shifted his actions. He had to be broken, blinded, and rebuilt. Jacob wasn't Israel until he wrestled with God. You don't just get a name, you earn it. The Stoics clearly understood this too. Here's something I got that Marcus Aurelius wrote. Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. What's that translated to? Identity is decided by execution. The ancient mystics, they said it best. The moment you see yourself outside of yourself, you are free. But if you fail to see yourself, you are a prisoner to whatever the world calls you. And if identity is just how you are seen, then what happens when no one is looking? Let's get a little more specific. And let's talk about identity as a system function. Your identity is not self-proclaimed, it is system recognized. Your system and how you do you. You can call yourself disciplined, but if your actions say otherwise, the system will erase you. You can call yourself a leader, but if nobody follows, you're just a spectator. You can call yourself committed, but if you quit every time it gets hard, then your identity is just a lie. The system doesn't care what you believe. It only processes execution. Identity is decided by movement. You wake up at 4 a.m. or when you said you would, for you are disciplined. You execute without excuses, you are powerful. You move without hesitation, you are undeniable. Your actions form your name. Your patterns shape your reputation. Your execution carves your legacy. You either execute your identity or the system assigns you one. And the default setting, average, replaceable, forgotten. Let's talk about the consequences of identity neglect. If you don't control your identity, the world will. Fail to execute, and here's what will happen. You become a background character. The world moves, but you're stuck. You lose respect. People trust patterns, not promises. You become a slave to circumstance. No identity means no control. Therefore, weak identity leads to 3 levels of consequence. The first, system consequence. The world ignores those who don't execute. That's just what it is. Self consequences. You lose trust in yourself. Spiritual consequences. A life without a strong identity, it's a wasted one. No execution equals no proof of self equals no power. The system is watching. Every day you fail to execute, your credibility is erased. Let me make this clear. War mode, and we are in war mode. We've declared war on ourselves because we're doing you and creating our own systems. War mode does not recognize belief. It recognizes proof. No proof, no identity. No proof, no future. No proof, delete. Say it with me. Proof or delete. Proof or delete. Proof or delete. Consequences are real. Let's talk about how you could rewrite your identity through execution. If you don't want to work, bounce. I can't help you. You can't help yourself. If you don't like who you are, you only have one solution. There's only one solution. Move differently. I got 3 laws. Follow them. Your identity will become undeniable. And here's law number 1. Your reputation is decided by consistency. And I assure you, you can be consistently inconsistent. What do people expect from you? That is your reputation. If they expect weakness, you train them to. If they expect power, you built that. If they expect nothing, you've been invisible for too long. What do? Become so consistent in execution that your identity is undeniable. Here's law number 2. Every action adds or deletes credibility. Everything you do builds your identity or it weakens it. No neutral moves. Every choice is either power or decay. You show up, you build power. You quit, you delete power. What you do today is a deposit or a withdrawal from your identity bank. Law number 3. The system only respects proof. You can't talk your way into power. You must show it. You can't declare yourself disciplined. You must prove it. You can't claim execution. You must live it. Execution builds evidence. Evidence builds identity. Identity builds power. Where's my chat? Where's my chat? Drop it in the comments. Think about your identity. Have you ever given your identity a thought? Don't. Don't. We need to decide our identities for ourselves. If you sit back and watch, you are self-erasing. If you make excuses, you are self-deleting. If you refuse to execute, you are giving up your power to someone else. There is no middle ground. You execute or you become invisible. Let's get into some final takeaways. If you don't execute, you don't exist. Look at your last 24 hours. Look at your last 24 hours. Who were you? Look at the last 7 days. What did your execution say about you? Go further. Look at the last 30 days. Did you build an identity or lose one? Who do you want to be? Every day decides that. War mode starts in 3 weeks. If you don't execute now, don't bother showing up. I'll give you some tangible takeaways. And let's think about some execution challenges that can help. Drop one action that proves your identity today. Not a belief, a proof. Ask yourself this. What are you willing to stake your name on? Drop it in the comments. No execution equals no identity. Move. Here we are again. I'm where I said I would be, doing what I said I would do, how I said I would do it. It's another moment together. It's another moment for you right here, right now. You either step into who you say you are or you admit without speaking. You don't got to say it to nobody. You'll say it to yourself. Admit you were never about it. There is no maybe. There is no tomorrow. There is no thinking about it. Every second you wait, your identity weakens. Every hesitation is an act of self-erasure. And in 30 days, you will either be unrecognizable from the version of yourself right now, or you will be stuck in this same cycle, pretending change is coming. I need you to understand, if you're going to roll with us, war mode is not for spectators. It is not for those who wait. It is not for those who talk. War mode is proof, and you either have proof or you don't exist. You either execute or you get erased. Who are you? Every day decides that. No execution, no identity, no movement, no existence, no proof, no power. War mode. It been done started. And if this just made it to you, it definitely starts now. Move or be erased. You either run the system or the system runs you. Change your mind, change your life. I am who I say I am. Do you and stay rich.